Hey, when you're buying a home, what is a property appraisal? What does it even mean? And what happens if the house doesn't appraise for the purchase price? We're going to talk about all that and more on today's video. I'm Peter Lindquist with the Lindquist team. I'm here with an excellent realtor in the Twin Cities area, Travis Anderson, and we're going to talk about everything that you possibly could want to know about appraisals. Hey, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. So with that, let's go ahead and get started.
Hey, Peter, tell me, what is an appraisal?
On most purchase contracts, when you have agreed to a price on a home, we want to know what the value of that home is. Are you paying too much? So property appraisal is we hire out a disinterested third party. It means that we're hiring somebody and I don't talk to them, the realtor doesn't talk to them. This is a truly independent evaluation of the property's value. So we hire that out, appraiser goes out, and they're going to do an overview of what the value is. And they give us an appraisal report that looks for a property similar to the property you're buying. And they're looking for a minimum of 3 of them that have sold in the last 12 months and that are within 1 mile of the subject property. In most cases, that's not a real big deal, but that's what a property appraisal is, and it's required on most purchase transactions.
Yeah, sounds good. So I heard a third-party independent opinion of price. And they come out to the property, they do measurements, they take images, and then they'll go back to their respective offices, and then they look for at least 3 comparables within a mile. And that helps justify to the lender the value.
So a lot of people will ask, if the property appraises lower than what the sales price is, what happens then? And typically there's 3 things that can happen. And I'll start with the first one, and that is that you could simply pay more. So if it's a $300,000 purchase price and the value comes in at $290,000, you would have an option to pay the $10,000 difference. So your loan amount is going to be based on the sales price or appraised value, whichever is lower. So if it appraises to $290,000, you're going to be putting your down payment based on $290,000. You could pay that difference if you wanted to. Most people won't do that. What do you see most people doing?
Most of the time we're negotiating with the seller. So like you said, option number 1, buyer brings extra money to the table. We'll use your example, $300,000 purchase price with a $290,000 appraisal. The down payment will be based on the $290,000, and then the buyer could bring an additional $10,000 to closing. So that would be option number 1. Option number 2 is you negotiate the purchase price down to the $290,000 or the appraised value. So now the seller is just giving up that $10,000. And then the third option would be to negotiate somewhere in the middle. Maybe the buyer's bringing a little bit of money to the table and the seller is lowering the price. There's actually a 4th option, which is way too much for this video, but that is just getting some creative ideas, working with you and me and the lender, specifically you as a lender, and trying to figure out what are some alternatives. I don't think we should get into that here in this video, but if we can't come to an agreement between buyer and seller, there may be some other options, right, Peter?
Yeah, including if the appraiser missed something. The buyer might say, hey, I think the house is actually worth more. And so, we can argue that what the appraiser report is and say, you really didn't consider this additional sale. And we can provide that to the appraiser. And in a rare instance, the appraiser might say, yeah, I did miss that. And they may adjust the value based on that. There's that, and then many other kind of variations of what you just said. But by and large, it's dealt with in those first 3 options. So another comment that I'll make about appraisals is that appraisals are not inspections, and they should not be confused with inspections. Their primary role is to go out and determine the value of the property. If you paid $410 for the property, is it worth $410? The appraiser, though, does look at some things on the house. So with FHA and VA and USDA loans, they look at certain conditions of the home. They tend to be a little bit pickier. But even with conventional financing, if there are health and safety issues, boy, I've had buyers that found a house that has no kitchen, and that's the house they want to buy, and they say, well, it's a conventional loan, it doesn't matter, but it actually does matter. If there's any health and safety issues, those kinds of things are considered. Appraisal is not an inspection, but they do look at some of the general conditions of the home.
And I would add to that, I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. Open plumbing and electrical concerns, things that are extremely obvious, loose handrails, things like, I mean, if an appraiser grabs a handrail and it falls off, that's a safety concern. So those things get addressed. As a realtor, you know this better than anybody because we call you right after the inspection and we say, Peter, please order the appraisal. Essentially, as a realtor, we've been tracking this since 2011. And when an appraisal is done and it's at the value of the purchase price or more, and then there's no work orders, like we don't have to fix the handrail, 95% of the time our clients are buying that property. If it's before the appraisal, there are other things that might come up, job loss, inspection concerns, etc. About 80% of the time you're buying a house after purchase agreement. So we on our team really like to track the appraisal. We like to call you right away and make sure that it gets ordered, gets completed, and then it's at value. And then we sort of give our clients like a big thumbs up, like you're 95% home after the appraisal.
And part of that is that there's kind of three things that are going on at the same time during your loan process. There's the credit approval. That means that we're collecting all your documentation. A mortgage underwriter is reviewing your file. We do that right away, and usually that's done prior to the appraisal being completed. And so if there's any troubles, normally we meet it there, and oftentimes then we're canceling the appraisal if the loan was denied, for example. So that's one reason why your stat ends up making sense. So that's the credit approval. Then there's the appraisal. That's an entirely different process. And then there's title work that has to be done. And that rarely ends up being an issue. But those are kind of the three things that are happening during your loan process.
Well, we covered a lot here, Peter, in the video about appraisals. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the consumer?
I'll just make a note on something that happens on an occasional basis with a buyer who has a significant down payment and is using conventional financing. Occasionally, we run that property address through our software and it says we need no appraisal. That means that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have enough information about that property address that they can look at it and say, yeah, it's worth what you're paying for it. That's wonderful when it happens. It saves time and it saves expense for the buyer. But it doesn't happen as often as it used to, especially in a market where home values are appreciating fairly rapidly as they have been in the Twin Cities.
Hey, Peter, we'll wrap up here. Great video, always great spending time with you. We talked a lot about appraisals. We talked about what they are, why they're important, how they're different from inspections, what happens if an appraisal comes in low. Hey, again, please like, subscribe to this video. If you've got questions, hit me a text or a phone call. My name is Travis Anderson, and as always, all my best to you and yours.